Chief, perhaps talk about what you're looking for in this particular interview and why Mr. Wittmann was the one who was chosen and just what you're looking to get out of it.
When we started this, as we're all aware of what we went through as a city and as a service last year around the amount of violence in the city, we really did commit to the public to want to begin a process to understand our service and make sure going forward that we had the best footing, the best understanding in terms of a modern police service. So we set about a process to develop a terms of reference and a framework for this. We did a search process to find the right person who could lead an independent review, who give us the best insight into not only the business of policing and the rule of law in this country, but also to make sure that we are aligned across a complex set of what we call our research, our policies, our training, our supervision, and our ultimate service delivery model. So that's how it's structured. That's how we ended up with retired Chief Justice Wittmann, and we're very, very pleased and feel very honored to have him come lead this project for us.
Can you run us through the process on this and how long this will run?
Well, it's structured to run in terms of the terms of reference and our contractual obligations to run for about a year, but I'm not constrained to that as well. I'd like it to take the time it needs to take to fulfill its mandate. So it's hard to say where this exactly goes as you start looking at things like overall policies, our training curriculum, our incident command models, our use of force options, all those sort of things we look at what may direct us in other places down the road. We know there's other studies like Yakabuchi that have been out there as well that there's a lot of reading and research to do. So as much as we'll constrain it in terms of how we believe it'll look, we want it to run its course. Make sure we get the most important document probably the service has had for many, many years to lead us going into the future.
Here's no precedent. When's the last time we've seen such a review like this in terms of P&Ps and use of force with CDS?
Well, from time to time we do them in smaller models. We do different reviews, but this is probably the first time that I can remember we've done a full, comprehensive, independent review. Bring someone from outside, to bring someone who can bring the more complex view of the rule of law and the rule of public life to policing and make sure we combine these things. We saw that with Yakabuchi. We saw some real good, strong effort from Toronto Police on that. And it's just time for Calgary to have a look at itself, making sure we're aligned with the expectations of community.
So at this point, the time is looking at about a year. Is it going to start immediately?
Yes, when we say start immediately, there's lots to accomplish in the early days about getting prepared, getting offices and structures set up, and getting some of that the first steps underway. But it will start right away.
Where's it? Sorry.
While the review is being conducted, are there any steps that the police force is taking in the meantime to reduce sentence?
Well, we've obviously through mostly seen through our open commission meetings, we've taken lots of steps already to improve officer safety, to improve public safety and our roles and responsibilities around the duty of care to people. So we've changed policies, we've done some new command structures, we've done some changes. Now we're looking at introducing some new intermediate use of force options back into the service so we can do some different work with that. You've heard some of the recent comments around new safety equipment, around protection for officers. So there's lots we're doing currently. None of this work stops us from continuing to progress. This just allows us to make sure we've looked at everything complexly and we've brought it all back together. We're going to report back to the public and to our membership about a model policing that's meant to align to everybody's expectations.
How is this going to benefit the citizens of Calgary?
Well, citizens of Calgary, this is all about the citizens of Calgary. Honestly, policing isn't something that's delivered to them, it's delivered with them. So Calgarians want to feel safe. They want to know, and they're well aware of the difficulties of public life right now, the difficulty, the chaoticness of crime and disorder that has happened in our city, the presence of addiction and other challenges around crime. They want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to keep ourselves safe, to keep them safe, but make sure overall the whole city feels safe again. And so you do that by saying, we can't keep telling them, just trust us, trust us. Here's an opportunity to give a full independent look at us in a way that they believe that we brought the most independent review possible to them so they can say, yes, we accept that and we can go forward in our relationship with community in the best model possible.
How have the high number of shootings affected morale in the service?
Well, it always affects morale. On an individual basis, it has a dramatic effect on an officer to have to be involved in something like this. But overall, it does affect, it starts to weigh on the service. The pace of work, the type of criminality we're dealing with, the presence of weapons, the presence of dangerous drugs, all starts to weigh on us in terms of our own safety and how we're keeping the public safe. And so it's our members very much want to make sure we're doing everything we possibly can to keep their career experience as safe as possible. They want to have the outcomes. They want to make sure that they're protecting people as well. No one wants to police an environment where they're simply not able to do their job. So this is, we know that we've had some morale challenges, and this is a part of our effort to make sure going forward that they're working at a place that has their safety as a paramount responsibility.
Is this also recognition that you're seeing a lot of changes out there and that it's time to maybe revisit policies, procedures, the policing model?
That's evident throughout the Western world that the policing models have to evolve with the nature of community. It is changing out there. The expectations, we're into an era, or a time where people are much more aware of what government brings to them, about the idea that we have a moral obligation to do the best we can, both on an economic footing but at a service delivery level, to provide a modern set of results to them. So when we talk about, you're going to hear us talk a lot more about harm reduction and restorative justice models going forward, and things we can do as a community to reduce the presence of danger and disruption and the like, but we still have a strong obligation to stand in front of people when there are very dangerous situations, to bring those dangerous situations to a safe resolution, and to protect the idea of sanctity of life. That our goal here is not to use force to resolve situations. Our goal is to resolve situations as safely as possible, but force from time to time is still very necessary. We just need to talk to the community more about that we're doing it in a way, the most modern and reasonable and thoughtful way possible.
But you get a sense here that, for example, in last year with the number of police-involved shootings and so on, are you concerned that this has created an issue with your relationship with the community as a department?
The community still, we hear from the community fairly loudly. The community still very strongly supports us. I just want to make sure, though, that as things become more visible, as things are becoming, as we talk more to communities, we're much more open with them. I want to make sure they're part of, they believe they're part of this and they understand us better. We don't want to simply rely on our strong past with them. We want to make sure going forward they know that we have done the due diligence that they believe we're doing. And this is a really strong piece of our due diligence with the Commission, with these levels of review, even with the media, to make sure that we are being held to account. We are testing our strategies, our theories, our principles in a way that we know that safety is being met and officer safety is being met at the same time.
Having participated in your use of force exercise last year, we saw, something you guys often describe as dynamic situations where even the members of the media were pulling their guns in these situations. I mean, how do you change it seems like a psychological thing. How do you go about changing that when people are in danger, fight or flight?
Well, it's a good question, because it's not about the moment. In that moment when you believe you're at risk of death or grievous bodily harm, those are decision points that are happening in split seconds, in a moment of time. All this is about how you prepare people when they're getting into that situation. The decision points that led you to that call, were you prepared? Do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right supervision? And the command processes, are your policies putting you in a position to say, do you have the right approach to go to those calls? But when you're in that moment, when you're faced with that decision, those are things that are left to the officer to articulate later. That in that second, what I felt like, the fear I experienced or the risk that was presented, I reacted. And when we see things like this, Lucy, you also have to remember that happens every day. Just because you haven't seen some of the incidents doesn't mean the problem still doesn't exist. We've had many officers do incredibly brave things, and they very well could have decided to make that decision, but in that moment they didn't. That meant the situation is still there, it's still dangerous, it's still problematic, but they made other decisions in the moment. So I don't compare one to the other. I just mean, what it's like in those scenarios. Some of your peers would have looked at that and said, we would have done something differently, but each one of you thought differently about the risk and about why you would or wouldn't have done something. Our officers go through that every day. This is about making sure we're putting in the best possible position in the future to help put them in a better decision-making mode.
Right. So with the goal of zero fatalities, for example, if one does occur, I mean, with that being the goal and that kind of being the standard, how will you deal with the officers? I know it's difficult to deal with an officer involved with the shooting in any case, but how do you deal with that when that's the goal and it could not be met potentially?
There's absolutely no reason not to hold on or believe in a goal of zero fatalities. It's a commitment to the sanctity of life. But when the officers are in that position, when they're the rarest of opportunities or that occasions where they have to make that decision and they use lethal force to protect themselves or others, they will be supported by the organization, they'll be supported by me. It's just, the goal is important. There's no reason to ever give up on that goal, but each day, each hour of the day, each circumstance we're in involves a lot of complex decisions, and I want to make sure they know that they're still supported in whatever, what happens. The goal here was, as an organization, you do all you can to do work before they get in that situation to make sure that they're in the best possible place, that they have the kind of supervision they require, they have the policy and the training and the safety equipment and the ability to make proper tactical decisions to plan for the things that they can plan for. A lot of the things that happen around a lot of officer-involved shootings are not planned events. Things that just spontaneously happen in front of you, and all of a sudden you find yourself having to make the most horrific of decisions. But the goal of the organization and the goal of the review is to make sure everything we're doing ahead of that is being thoughtfully delivered. So, sorry.
It's a question I had for Justice Wittmann. I wanted to get your answer as well. How important is community input in this review?
Well, perhaps I'll let Justice Wittmann talk about his terms of reference and how he intends to approach this. I think, again, this will likely take us through that process. We already talked to the community considerably throughout the year around how the Commission surveys the community and what they expect of our service. But I think Justice Wittmann would probably be in a better place to talk about how he tends to sort of approach that. So.
Chief, before you put in just a quick question, what percentage of the force at this point uses body cams?
Well, right now our body cams have been returned because of technical failure, so we're just in that process now of going through that process of acquiring new equipment. So right now, they're not out there. The in-car videos were robustly deployed, but the body-worn cams now are still in a procurement process.
Any sense of when we may see?
We'll probably be talking about that over the next month or two. We'll be talking about that again. So.
Chief, just one quick one before I leave the podium.
I'm trying to leave, you know.
Is there, because the scope is going to be around a year, could be a little bit more, could be less. Is the force open to making big changes even before the review comes out? For example, I know in Toronto they have the gun where I think it's like a sandbag gun, so it obviously causes a lot of harm, but usually non-fatal. Would there be an opportunity for the force to make that kind of change before the review is finished?
Absolutely. As I said before, we will continue to look for advancements even through this process. I think you'll see that, or we're very close to being able to announce our own sort of opportunities around less lethal deployments, but those are things we'll probably talk to you about through the Commission over the next month or two. So. Okay, and I'll bring Justice Wittmann up. So.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, just same question I asked the Chief. What role will community input play in your review process?
I will take input from anyone who has something relevant to the terms of reference that I'm operating under. That would include the community expectations, and any valuable input they have to offer.
And can you just quickly run through how you expect the review process to go? Like what exactly is going to take place?
Well, this is my second day on the job, and the review will involve a lot of research and digesting on my part to begin with. What are the existing policies, procedures, training, command, tactics, equipment that exist now? And then I'll have to organize that into some way. But I've already invited members of the Calgary Police Service to talk to me. I'll talk to anybody at any time, and I've already got 3 replies as the result of the internal email this morning. So there are people that are interested in talking to me. I think part of my mandate includes an inquiry into the culture of the organization. The culture of any organization is the sum of its values and beliefs. And that could be an important facet of the inquiry as it pertains to the use of force, aside from all of the other matters that the Chief mentioned. But I think the emphasis in terms of officer safety and public safety is to avoid situations where the use of force is necessary. I think that the Chief put it that way. That is not to get into a situation where the use of force is necessary, but sometimes it will be necessary.
Justice Wittmann, could this include things like, for example, over the next year, public forums where there's that kind of level of engagement? Or is this all going to be something that's going to be more sort of behind closed doors?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm certainly not adverse to taking input in public if that is perceived to be valuable. I'm not sure in terms of a public forum how much interest there would be. If there's that interest, I would certainly attend and certainly take the input. I mean, my job is to gather information and then make decisions on the basis of that information.
So what kind of decisions, can you give some examples of what those decisions could be?
Well, I don't want to speculate what they might be, but I do want to emphasize that part of the mandate is not to find blame on individuals or institutions. That's specific to my mandate. And I have some experience in public inquiries before. Not that this is a public inquiry, but in those instances, the mandate is always not to lay blame. So that will not happen because I won't be doing it. And but one of the findings that I could make, for example, is to evaluate as part of my mandate any things that the Calgary Police Service has done on an ongoing basis, even after I get my mandate, and say this aligns with my findings, it aligns with a recommendation I would have made in any event, that sort of thing, or maybe it doesn't align with any recommendation I would have made. I don't know that yet.
There's been a number of high-profile cases where the city police have been involved in use of force, and the cases have been resolved. Do you anticipate talking to those families involved in those cases at all in your research?
Yeah, I do. If either those families request it, or if I think it's valuable and relevant to my mandate. In those kinds of situations, not that I know the details at this moment, usually the families aren't present when the incident occurs. However, that's not to say that their input may not be valuable and important. And in those kinds of situations or tragedies, I think it's always helpful to bring a context and an understanding as to their perspective on any situation.
How will the review ensure independence and objectivity?
Pardon me?
How will the review ensure independence and objectivity?
For the last 18 years I've been a judge. The hallmark of every judge in this country is impartiality and independence. And I wouldn't expect that I would be in this position had I not been a judge. Because I think that that is the attribute that is brought to the inquiry that I think the Calgary Police Service desires. So they go to a retired judge. They can't go to a sitting judge or someone like that. There's probably lots of retired judges out there that could perform the task just as well or better than I.
Justice Wittmann, as part of this process, are you going to be reviewing the professional standards complaints made about police?
Yes, I've already asked for some materials on that in terms of where use of force has been involved. Yes, I will be reviewing that. And by the way, at any request I've made, remember this is my second day only, any request I've made has been met with full cooperation and an assurance that I will get what I've asked for.
What are just your initial thoughts going into the review, considering there were 10 officer-involved shootings last year and 4 the year before? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you see that many incidents?
The first thing that comes to my mind is not to prejudge, not to jump to conclusions. These matters are very complex. They're individualistic, and it's almost like talking to an actuary where they're going to talk about the 1 in 100-year flood, and it happens every 2 years. There's a number of factors involved, I think, in every incident. Every incident's unique. So my initial thought is don't prejudge any of it until you get into it, and take the information and find the facts according to that information.
How much staff will you have working with you in this situation?
I've again, this is my second day on the job. I have been offered 2 people to assist so far. I'm sure there will be others. I have no indication that any request or any reasonable request I make will be denied. So whatever happens, it won't be because of lack of staff.
I have a question for you, Brian.
Did you want to ask?
I was just curious, is there a budget for this whole process? How much is this going to cost?
I'll let Mr. Thiessen talk to you about that.
Hi. So on your budget question, it's the chief's process, his review that he initiated. He has proposed a budget of $500,000 to F&A, so Finance and Audit of the Police Commission. Obviously, the chief can't set parameters on how long this will take. He wants it to be a thorough and fulsome review, but they have a preliminary approved budget through the Calgary Police Commission. They will report back to the Calgary Police Commission, Finance and Audit, and the General Commission on a regular basis. I have found the chief and his executive to be strong keepers of the public purse, and I'm confident they'll continue to do that.
So the chief will be getting a salary then?
Sorry, the chief of police, sorry, not the... I assume that, like most people, Chief Justice Wittmann will get paid. I can't talk about the specifics of the salary today, but of course he has been retained to provide these services. He offers great value to the service in that regard, so he will be paid. We haven't broken out the budget. Likely at the end of the terms, the chief will provide you with a summary of costs.
So Brian, independent review is a word, 2 words we've heard a lot at CPS, at CPC meetings, but it's not about this issue. You know, to see an independent review be independently brought up by CPS, they found a justice, and to still be in the stages of, well, we assume because we'll hear on Tuesday, but in the stages of finding that same person to conduct an internal HR review. What does that say to you? Is there a priority list here that you're seeing?
No, I think first of all, you know, keep in mind 2 completely different processes, and the service, in my opinion, is acting rapidly on both. So on one stream, the service is providing a thorough review on gender diversity. They're acting quickly on the 7-point plan. On police-involved shootings, the service initiated their own review, which I think is commendable in itself. They ensured the objectivity by retaining, in my opinion, one of the best litigators to practice in this country, and then Chief Justice after that, who I guarantee provides a level of objectivity and judicial input that we couldn't ask for better, frankly. They've done it in a timely manner. The Calgary Police Commission, as the civilian oversight body, is very pleased to see how quickly the service has moved in this regard. I'm also pleased to see, you know, Vice Chair Silver is here today. She and other members of the Commission have asked a number of questions on this topic. I can tell you that the service has regularly updated the Commission members on their questions regarding use of force. A number of questions were asked here today whether the service would be moving forward on improvements while Chief Justice Wittmann does his work. I can tell you that we have seen that they have constantly worked on it. They've considered a number of options, a number of tactics. They're consistently reporting back to the Commission. So as the civilian oversight body, I can report to the public that we are hearing back regularly. We are pleased that the service is moving forward with changes as they do their review, and I'm confident that Chief Justice Wittmann will do a fantastic job on behalf of the public.
When did you first start having discussions on this with the chief and with the department in terms
We've been speaking about this for over 6 months already, so we've been working with the chief from day one. Basically, as these matters arose, the chief would report back regularly to the commission. We've been talking about it. The chief had raised months ago that he was very interested in initiating an internal review, and that he was pursuing that and has been reporting consistently back to the commission on that.